So your friend comes to you, he's become Muslim, he has children from a previous wife, and now with his new Muslim wife, he has Muslim children. Are they going to be treated the same? Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, an interesting question which has come up a few times is you have your new Muslim who has now remarried and they are trying to work out how to develop the relationship with the new Muslim's previous children. So previous non-Muslim wife, previous non-Muslim children, and now perhaps let's say that we even have now new children as well who are Muslim. The ages are irrelevant here. The point is there something in the deen that says that they should be treated differently because of the fact that they are non-Muslim and these are now Muslim? In principle, of course, it's not permissible to differentiate how one treats their own children. There's a very famous hadith to this regard. The Prophet ﷺ was approached by the father of a companion called Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. So his father was carrying Nu'man. Nu'man was just a young baby, and his father said to the Prophet ﷺ, I'd like you just to kind of be a witness that I've given my son, Nu'man, a certain thing. It's not clear what actually he was given him, but like a passing on of a gift of some sort. The Prophet ﷺ, he was immediately suspicious and he said, did you give the same to the rest of your children? And Nu'man's father said, no, I didn't. And so the Prophet ﷺ then said, then go and find someone else to do the witnessing for you. I'm not going to do that. The reason that he said that is because he didn't want to become party to something which is going to blow up in the future. These little things, we might think that they're kind of menial, they're insignificant, but of course, brothers and sisters especially take these things very, very seriously. You can't go and show favoritism to one and then hate on the other by not giving it to them, even though your intention is not to hate. Now, this is a very well-known principle. The scholars of fiqh have discussed it, and that applies generally to one's normal children. The question that we have here is that, is there any difference to be seen if one of the children is non-Muslim? Or, for example, if one of the children doesn't behave very well, is it possible to punish a child by not giving them the same? What's actually allowed with respect to different amounts of something? What about, for example, if some children are older? Obviously, those that are younger, if you're giving them a monetary gift, for example, on Eid, you're not going to give the young child £50 or £20. Like the 15-year-old or the 12-year-old, where you might give a £20 note, and to the little kid you might give a couple of coins, and they're very happy with that. They play with it more, they buy sweets with it more. It's is there an understanding with respect to this hadith that one can actually differ in giving the amounts even to existing children? In the books of fiqh, we know that that's possible because the illah, and this word is very, very important, the Sharia reason, okay? The Sharia reason behind the prohibition of not giving different amounts to children is because they will feel it and it will cause some resentment. Of course, a child is very, very happy when they are given something which is munasib, which is appropriate for their age and for their intellect and for their time, whether it's a toy or sweets or whatever. And the other child also understands the amount that they were given and they're happy with that. But for example, if they were both grown-ups, like two 25-year-olds, twins, or you had a 35 and a 25-year-old, and you gave one a gift of 10,000 and you gave the other one a gift of 5,000, that's going to create some serious tension, and that's something which is impermissible because, of course, Deen of Islam is trying to reduce tensions amongst the family. It is very focused in bringing all kinds of getting rid of any kind of sources of shahna, as we call it, any kind of sources of resentment and anger out of the family structure. The non-Muslim child, your non-Muslim son or daughter, is not to be treated any differently than the Muslim son or daughter. It is not permissible to make one feel better than the other in principle. In principle. So there's a caveat. What is that caveat? What if the non-Muslim child who has now grown to the age of 20 is someone who is not only non-Muslim but doesn't care about life, is very immoral in their behavior, they're constantly gambling, they're womanizing, and so on and so forth. You know that when they receive the money, it goes straight out and it's spent on gambling and on haram things. Is it permissible then to still give that person the money, knowing that's what they're going to do? That's what they're going to actually waste their money with. Is it permissible to actually say to this person, I am not going to give you this money because I know you're going to waste it? The answer is yes, it is permissible. This is because you are not going to be party to a sin. You know it. This is an exception to the general rule. Likewise, there are other ways of looking at this. Maybe the non-Muslim child is not a womanizer or someone who's involved in immoral practice, and you feel that actually giving this person a little bit of extra money, so the other way around, a little bit of extra love will bring them closer to the deen. Is there space for that? Yes, there is. It is permissible to do certain actions in order to please certain people at different times. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even tells the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam this with respect to his wives. His wives are of different characters, and sometimes some require a little bit of this that others don't require. And this is about keeping the people happy. So therefore, it is permissible. If there is a need, for example, the son has shown some kind of interest to you, for you to show that little bit more interest, for you to potentially give a little bit more money, a few extra gifts, and hopefully get a buy-in also from the Muslim side of the family to make them understand this is the reason that you're giving them that little bit of extra. Of course, if they don't understand, then from the zahir, from the outwardly, from the outward kind of side, it must not be perceived by any of the children that you're favoring one over the other, because they might not be able to understand these kind of the politics that you're playing, the long-term game that you're playing. They don't understand the da'wah that you're trying to give. And that, of course, is something which is permissible for you to do because you have a reason to. There's an actual Shari'i reason which is causing an exception in the general rule that you are making a difference in what you give and how you treat the other the one child over the other. So just to clarify, even though in principle they are to be treated the same, there might be certain scenarios where one gets treated better than the other. Now, just to give some backing to what you might feel naturally is the correct answer, which is that the Muslim child is given more, that's quite possible. That's quite possible that you are supporting the Muslim child more because they're showing a real use for the money, that they're actually putting the money towards khair, they may be studying, they may be using it to promote the da'wah and so on and so forth. Then this is something which is permissible because, again, of the need. There is no general principle that, just because he's a Muslim, he gets more. No. If he's a Muslim and he's going to use the money for good, more so than the other, then that money can be used in that scenario. And equally, if in this scenario the Muslim child is not behaving well and he is wasting the money as well, then he would also have money withheld from him, or favors or love withheld from him to teach him a lesson. And perhaps in another scenario, the non-Muslim is becoming closer, the non-Muslim child needs that little bit of extra love, wants to see that extra generosity. Maybe they're waiting to see that change in the father or the mother that they had before. They weren't happy with how they were treated. Now that they're Muslim, they become better, more loving, more aware, more willing to connect. And that's something which can have an impact upon the hearts. Of course, parents are very, very in a very privileged position, a very powerful position when it comes to children, because whatever happens through thick and thin, blood is always thicker than water. And they will always listen and feel the impact of any kind of action of birr or niceness or kindness or charity or a gift when it comes from the parents. That is why I say, and I'm very clear on this, that if there is a need to give something a little bit extra to the non-Muslim child, that is also permissible because of the need. And if there is a reason to give the Muslim child something extra because of the need, then that is permissible. However, I do want to make a point, and this is very, very important, that apart from the fact that we should treat our children the same, many new Muslims bring another issue to the fore, and they say, what about our responsibilities with respect to da'wah? Because of that, that relationship I was telling you about, the fact that we're in the position of power, that they do listen to us, is it more obligatory upon us to give them da'wah? Like, are we going to be held extra accountable? Now, this is very interesting. It goes back down to age and about who's in your care. So for example, just like teaching your child the prayer, your normal Muslim child the prayer, when he is 7, 8, 9, 10, you are being specifically obligated to show them the prayer in an informal way between the age 7, 8, 9, and at 10 it starts to become formal, becomes serious. Even disciplinary action is required from the responsible parent so that the child is actually brought upon the prayer in a serious way, even though they're not being held accountable for it. When they start to be held accountable for it, i.e. a couple of years later when they go through puberty, then of course they are expected to have got into it because they now being held accountable. Are you still then held accountable for waking them up and motivating them and making sure that the punishment or disciplinary action is there as a warning if they kind of stray? The answer is yes. Until when? Until they become out of your care. You see, the ages that you have here are 7, where it starts, 10, where it becomes serious, puberty, where they start become held accountable for that action, and then maybe 18, 19, when they start to then earn for themselves. They don't necessarily need to live with you, they might move out, i.e. they come out of your care, they're not dependent upon you anymore. Until that time that they are dependent upon you, you are responsible for their upkeep, not just financially, but keep giving them the da'wah. Now, of course, you are responsible to give them da'wah until your final breath, and that is towards your family and to every single person that you come across. But that specific responsibility is upon you because they are dependent upon you. Once they are now no longer dependent upon you, they're like any other adult. So if you had a child and they are now 19, 20 years old and they've moved out, the responsibility towards them with respect to the obligation is just the same as giving the da'wah to your neighbor. You're not going to force your neighbor to pray. You're going to say to your neighbor, listen, you got to pray. And this is something which is required of you as a Muslim, and that's it. Or another neighbor who is a non-Muslim and you're giving them da'wah. It's a general obligation. You don't have to go out there and knock on the door and say, Aslam to Islam, accept Islam and you'll be safe and blah blah blah. You can go and express that by your giving dishes, by giving a book over, by having a party or whatever. The ways of da'wah, alhamdulillah, are open. The Prophet ﷺ has not specified only one way of da'wah, and that's from his mercy to his nation. And so I want you to know that the obligation towards giving da'wah to your child who's grown up, the one who was the one who's non-Muslim, and you had his now maybe 20, 25 plus, is no different to you giving da'wah to anyone else because they are no longer dependent upon you. However, if they are young, they are 10, 12, they're still receiving money from you, living in your house, for example, you visit them regularly, then the same obligatory responsibilities upon you, just like it would be for your Muslim child, because they are dependent upon you, they are forced to listen to you, and they are under your control. Therefore, it's unacceptable that you allow someone who's in your control to grow up and then do things or to be practicing un-Islamic things when you can change that, because this is taghyir al-munkar. This is to enjoin the good and forbid the evil, and that's something obligatory. And the obligation of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil is completely dependent upon one's ability, and one's ability differs according to the age and the status of the one you're giving da'wah to. So when they are dependent upon you when they are young, then obviously you have a greater ability, and the greater the ability that you have, the greater the obligation that it is. So enjoining the good and forbidding the evil becomes something very, very important and obligatory when the children are young. So I hope you understand the difference between not getting confused with the issue whether they are Muslim or not Muslim. This is an issue of your authority with that person. If they are young, then you will make sure that they are given the da'wah and everything remains under your control. And in fact, we're going to come back to this when we look at issues of marriage and who you can get married to, and whether the fact that you'll be in control over your children's religion can play a role in the ruling of marrying this woman who's in front of you. So it's actually very, very important, this issue of authority and control. So in summary, it is permissible for, if there is a need, to give something extra to the non-Muslim child that you have or the Muslim child if there's a genuine reason that you see a lot of benefit in, and that the other party will not feel resentful as a result, that there's not going to be some kind of tension and problem, which you must minimize. Now, if they are older, you will try to prevent doing that because that's when they really feel that anger. However, at the same time, it's that at that age where you can possibly explain the reason why you're doing something like that. In principle, our love and our care is the same for non-Muslim and Muslim children alike. It is obvious that if someone is doing an action which is completely haram and going against the deen of Allah, then we're not going to support that. However, at the same time, our obligation to look after and care for our people is the same regardless of their deen, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.